I'm Rev Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Rev Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today, my guest is Peg Durkee, who is a longtime student and teacher in A Course of Miracles. Hi there. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Glad you're here.
You too.
And we have a prophetic topic today that comes from the Course of Miracles, and it is united with my Creator. And this line is from a transmission from Jesus as given to Helen Schuckman. And she was, we'll find out about her, but she was one of the original receivers of this transmission of the whole Course in Miracles. And the statement reads as follows: I am one self, united with my Creator, at one with all aspects of creation, and limitless in power and in peace. And we're going to expand on that a little bit later, but let's start with you, Peg. What brought you to A Course in Miracles? Then, in your own words, in your own, however you want to autobiographically do it.
I lived in Austin, Texas. It was 79-80. I was working for a drug abuse program, an outpatient program, and we had offices. Our home office was in some building in Austin, Texas. And in this 3 or 4 store building, they had a little metaphysical bookstore. And often when we'd have our staff meetings, I'd get there early and I walked into this bookstore because I was kind of beginning my metaphysical journey as well. And I saw there were 3 books. In the original, there were 3 separate books on the shelf, and it said Course of Miracles, and I went, ooh, how cool. Wow, what's that about,
I could use a miracle about now.
Right. And it was $40, and I made $200, I made $400 a month. So I had to save up to get it. And I thought I was going to open up that book and learn how to walk on water, heal people, raise the dead, all that, And so I finally saved my money up, went back that day and bought it, took it home, and it came in a little box. I packed it in a box and I opened it up, and it was like, there's no walking on water, no raise the dead, no anything. But I thought, oh, well. So I was a little disappointed at first. I really thought I'd learn how to do miracles. And like the Bible speaks of those kinds of miracles. And so, but I thought, well, I just spent $40. I got to read this thing. And so as I read the Course in Miracles, I knew it was in English. I could see that the words were English, but they didn't quite make sense to me. It was a little bit over my head. And so I put it down for a little while, and then I went back to it. And then I found a portion in there that talks about you don't have to believe anything that this says. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. But in order for it to work, you have to apply it. And I had tried, it's separated into the text, the workbook, and a manual for teachers. So it was the text that was really overwhelming for me. And so when I picked up the lessons, there's 365 lessons, then, they were really nice. Like, nothing I see on the street means anything. I've given this all the meaning it has for me. I am not a victim of the world I see. These are titles for the lessons. I went, okay, now that was pretty, I could kind of latch on to that. I could understand that. Not necessarily understand it, but that piqued my excitement, and I could relate to that somewhat. And so what I started doing was just reading the lesson, and even if I didn't understand it, I applied it just like the introduction said to do. And the more I did that, then the more of an experience I had of what that was. And then I could kind of go back and look at the text and go, okay, I kind of I kind of see this. I kind of could understand it a little bit. And the manual for teachers is kind of set up in kind of a question-answer thing. Like, you know, is reincarnation so? And so then I would read what that was about. And so then I was able to gradually kind of start practicing it in a way that instead of me doing the lessons kind of started doing me, because it helped me change my perception a little bit. And since I was in this drug program and also a member of AA, it really kind of helped me understand that I can only change the things that I can change. I am responsible for how I see the world. And so, I kind of met that. I met an Indian guru all at the same time. So I had a really big spiritual awakening, not just because of the 12 steps, but because of the Course and then this man that I met.
This Course, does it have requirements of a daily practice? Does it call upon you to pray, to meditate, to contemplate, or is it just doing the workbook thing?
Well, there's the text is the theory, and the lessons are the application of that. So that's how you gain that kind of experience through it. There are 365 lessons. You don't have to do them all in a row. You know, and you don't have to start on January 1st, which a lot of people want to do and go through the whole year. And within each lesson, there's a little practice. And so sometimes it lasts a minute. Sometimes as you get into the lessons, you know, you might be asked to spend 5 minutes a day and then remember the lesson every hour. So each lesson has its own little practice within it.
But it's not a standard dogmatic kind of practice.
No.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say that at all.
So how long before you were practicing did you start to feel shifts in your life?
Well, now you're asking me to reach way back into my memory. I would say, again, because it was so overwhelming, and once I started doing those lessons, it really was that application every day. Because if I got angry at somebody or somebody, you know, hurt my feelings, I go, okay, let me just recite my lesson for the day and do that. So I would say I did have some short-term immediate responses once I just stuck to the lessons for a while. And since that was however many years ago, 30-something years ago, I can say that my experience and my understanding just continues to deepen. And then there were times when I went, okay, I'm done. And I would put the Course aside and then go back to it again to start my lessons, to start my reading. And my experiences sometimes were so amazing, unexpected to me, that I'd go, oh, I think I need to go deeper again. I need to focus more on this, because it always spoke to me. You know, I've tried, you know, being, you know, finding metaphysics, practical Christianity through Unity. And at that time in the world, that's when all the self-help things were kind of being born and coming into fruition. And I tried them all. I went to almost rebirthing, all those things really, I would try them all. I'd go, I'd seek. I was a big seeker, but I always kind of came back to the Course, and I always came back to my meditation practice, because those two things kind of went hand in hand. I would take the lesson and go deeper with it, even, you know, more so just to be with that. So I would say they were immediate, and then they just kept coming and going and being deeper.
So the meditation, that was basically from the guru. Mm-hmm. And the Course, and you kept coming back to it. Mm-hmm. What brought you back? Just an intuitive feeling, or was this something that was demonstrating in your life, or both?
It was how it showed up for me in my life, and what I learned from that had more of effect on me than breathing in a bathtub full of cold water, which is still an awesome thing. You know, I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just saying I got more out of it. You know, it's like, because practicing forgiveness, which is what the Course is really all about, is forgiveness, and the parts of me that woke up, the relationships that were healed for me because of that, made me go, this is what works for me. Everything else is kind of the gravy on the potatoes, but the course and my meditation have always been my meat and potatoes, and everything else was side dish or dessert.
I hear you. So, can you shed some light on the origin of the course and maybe how it's evolved over time?
The course was, as you said earlier, transmitted, which is a good word, to a woman named Helen. And Helen was a psychologist. She was mostly atheist. And she considered herself a scribe of the course. It wasn't channeled to her because she didn't change personality. She didn't pick up a new accent or anything. She just she describes it as kind of a hearing, but not necessarily an auditory hearing, just kind of a mind-knowing hearing.
Can you put a time frame on this?
This began in 1963, and it was completed in the early 70s. And what happened was she worked for Bill Thetford, who was the department leader of the psychology department at Columbia, and he hired her. And they evidently had some kind of a combative relationship. And one day, Bill said, there's got to be another way. And she agreed. And then the course kind of started coming to Helen after that. And she started, what the voice was saying to her, and it's in the course, it's in the preface of the course, said, this is a Course in Miracles, please take notes. And she was a little startled by that, of course, being a psychologist and knowing what hearing voices could mean to the outside world. And she finally talked to Bill about it, and he said, well, why don't you start taking the notes and see what happens? So she would take the notes in her shorthand and then read them to him, and he would type them up. And that's how the first transcribing and everything began.
So this didn't come all in one big lump. It was little by little by little.
Right. And she states that she could go, okay, the phone would ring and it would stop, and she would answer the phone, do whatever was necessary in that moment, and pick right back up where she left off. So it really was, in her experience, as I understand it from reading, really was like a dictation. And she identified this voice as Jesus. I don't think he said, okay, this is Jesus, please take notes. It was more of,
okay. And did it come in, you said there was 3 books. Do you know if, she was given,
the text came first,
okay,
then the workbook, and then the manual for teachers.
So it was given in total sequence.
Right. And after those came, there was a couple of, there was a clarification of terms came that's now in the new book. I don't have it in this one that I have here. And there was a pamphlet, which I did mean to bring you and I forgot, psychotherapy practice in the Course in Miracles, and one other pamphlet, I can't remember what it is. So a couple other little things came afterwards, but weren't included in the original 3 books.
In the transmissions, is Miracles, the Course in Miracles, was a name given to it? Is that a name she chose? And what does the Course teach us about the definition of miracles?
Well, again, the voice said, this is a Course in Miracles.
Okay.
So yes, that was given the title. Please take notes. And what was the second half of the question?
Just, does the transmission define miracles?
Not in a way that I can, in this moment, pull to the front lobe. What it does talk about is that miracles are not the spectacular occurrence, these are my words, of somebody walking on water or healing the dead. What it says is that miracles are natural, and when they don't occur, something is wrong. So what we consider a miracle is what God considers should be happening every day. And it's not necessarily about me being able to heal you of an illness. The miracle is actually, it talks about that prayer is the medium for miracles, and the miracles really is the wakening up of your true self. Again, I'm paraphrasing.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, then kind of what you're saying is the more that I enhance my spirit the more I allow the miracles to be materialized in my life?
I would say it would be more the more that you wake up to your spirit, to who you, the truth of you.
I am one
truly
self, united with my Creator, at one with all aspects of creation, and limitless in power and
Right.
peace.
The more that we wake up to that's who we are. You know, the Course talks about there's the ego, you know, the
Yeah.
ego mind, which is wrong-mindedness, and the right mind, which is the mind of spirit within us. You know, Unity calls it the higher self, basically. But the more I can align myself with that as my point of reference for my day, for who I am, then that helps me wake up. And that what the ego has done is create this world that keeps us separated 1 billion times over. And so, you know, the Course talks about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence within us. And it's our job to remove the blocks.
Does the Course talk at all about why we have an ego and a spirit or a right mind?
Well, in the beginning it talks about that there was a tiny mad idea that we are awake sitting in the lap of God, basically, those are exact words. And that the thought came in that went, I wonder what the world would be like over there. And it talks about that it wasn't that the tiny mad idea was wrong, that we could separate ourselves from God. It's that we forgot to laugh at that tiny mad idea. And that the tiny mad idea was when the ego...
We took ourselves too seriously.
We took ourselves too seriously. And we created that thought created the world, pachoom, instantly. And also what was created instantly was the answer to all of that, was that you are united with your Creator. That is the truth about you. That's what remains the truth about you, and nothing you can do in this ego world can change the truth of who you are. So
but if I don't recognize the truth, I'm blocked from the benefits that truth brings.
You're blocked from the reflection of that in this world, because our state of who we are is changeless. But yes, we're blocked to that awareness of that, and what that peace that comes with knowing that is our true self.
So let's go back to these 365 lessons. You mentioned, I imagine, at least one on forgiveness. Mm-hmm. What other lessons promote this? What are they trying to get you to do to promote this oneness and this limitless power and peace?
Well, I can say that my own experience, and again, you know, I'm really a student in kindergarten with the Course in Miracles. That's how I see myself.
You've been doing it for 35 years.
I know it. And so I used to think, oh, wow, look at me, I'm so spiritual. And then spiritual pride, you know. Yeah. It's like the ego will take whatever we do and use it against us. And the Holy Spirit will also take the same thing and try to wake you up with it, you know. So sometimes I get a little sidetracked in my awesomeness, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was the question?
Well, what other
okay,
lessons?
So the first part of the lessons, in my experience, it talks about us, we need to undo or we need to unlearn the things that the ego or that the world teaches us to be true. And so the first part, you know, well, that I have given this reality all the meaning it has for me. You know, and everything I know about this glass of water, I've learned from the past. I've learned because somebody told me that was a glass, and somebody said that the world says that's water, and the world says this is real. So how can I really see this glass or this moment with you in the present? Because I have layers upon layers upon layers of past learning on top of that. So it's trying to wipe that slate clean and let God's meaning come into what the meaning of this moment is.
Do we have to wipe everything out, or is some of that? I mean,
do you want to be half awake?
Well, I mean, no, but I mean, the question becomes, how relevant is me changing that from a glass of water to some other?
Well, I think what the point is that, you know, we are in kindergarten and we're starting with things that we can just, you know, the Course uses what we already have going to talk with us, to speak with us.
Okay.
You know? And so I think, you know, the Course talks about that the world is a dream. And so again, it's to show us, in my experience, that the dream about this glass of water is no worse or no better than the dream about a giant gorilla, because it's all a dream, regardless of how it looks. And so it is about undoing it all, so that I can truly wake up to who I am. If that made any sense. I'm going to drink some of this water.
The next question becomes, Peg, is truly waking up the equivalent, because you've had experiences with a guru, is that the equivalent of self-realization?
Let me see. Self-realization as a guru in those terms?
Self-realization, yeah. I mean, what my understanding of self-realization is the understanding of the oneness. What this statement that we read states, basically, I'm one with God. The body is just a vehicle I use for helping teach other people.
Yeah, I think you could say that. That's a pretty clear statement. I think it's actually a little bigger than that. I think it's
Elaborate.
Well, it's like the experiences that I've had sometimes really are so big that they're glimpses. And I don't know if I could handle the full realization of that peace that passes no understanding in this moment. I strive for that.
Can you give us an example of one of those experiences?
Oh, gosh.
And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, because I think people need to hear this, that they're having experiences they don't understand and they're afraid to talk about.
Well, there is and again, it's trying to, one night I was reading in the Course in Miracles, and it said to me, whatever paragraph it was in, it said, if you knew that this object, this relationship, really would keep you from your awareness of God and would hinder your relationship with Him, would you really want it? And in that moment, in all my honesty, I went, I sure would, God, because I haven't had a big enough experience of you to want you more than I want this thing. And it can be, it could be drugs, it can be relationships, it can be chocolate, it can be anything that we are really fixated on, that the ego uses to distract us from that awareness. Let me finish. Yeah, so in that moment, I just knew I was being honest. And so that night I went to bed, and I had a dream. And I dreamt that there was this man there, and he was dying. And he looked at me, and all I could see were these eyes. And he said, I will always love you. And I will always find you, no matter what face you have, no matter where we're going, I love you. And in that dream, the love in that dream was, to that date, the most, I had never felt anything like it in my waking state. And it was so intense, and it was so beautiful, and it was so safe and peaceful. But it woke me up. It was so intense. And so to have that kind of experience after being so honest, yes, I haven't had that experience. And then to have one, 5 hours later when I went to sleep.
Were you able to recognize the face?
No.
Before that, since then?
No.
Interesting. And it didn't identify itself?
No. It was just...
Yeah, no, I understand. So two things come from what I'm hearing. There is an element, and obviously, that is free will. We get to choose.
One of the things that made me laugh the first time I read it, it says, it is a required course. Only the time you take to use it is up to you. So yes, so there is a choice.
And a choice to use it, and a choice to be in ego, or a choice to be in spirit or right mind.
Absolutely.
And you talk about reincarnation. That's part of the course too, then.
Well, what it says about reincarnation is if you find it helpful, if it's a helpful concept for you to believe in, and again, the Holy Spirit will use whatever it is we do believe in to wake us up within that framework. Because here I am talking to you right here and now, and we're like-minded in many ways, right? But then there could be someone in Turkey who's reading the Course in Miracles, and they don't believe about reincarnation. So the Holy Spirit's going to use what their culture is, what their world is, what their experiences are to wake up. And the Course does talk about, again, if that's helpful, and I think for me, I don't know if I so much believe in reincarnation anymore as I do in the reoccurring dream. And so for me, a memory of another life is really a memory of another dream. And it was another form I took in another dream. So
and you get to choose that you want to dream again.
I choose to dream again, as I think I'll be dreaming again until I can really possibly wake up from the dream.
What, other than the waking up, what is the gauge that you're waking up? I mean, are there benchmarks within the lessons that, like if you experienced this, you've gotten so far?
Well, I think the benchmarks are really individual, and I will say that the more that I can respond with love to somebody, to me is a sign I'm on the right path. Instead of taking, I have recently had, just in my worldly experience walking this planet in Santa Fe, a situation where I could really see myself as wrongly accused, or I could be a real big victim if I chose to. But what the Course has taught me is that the thing that I'm doing to myself, and that what's going on with me, the Course really talks about, the Course is a course in cause and not effect. I can take care of the effects or the symptoms out here, but if I don't change the cause of why I'm seeing the world the way I'm seeing it, then I'm going to keep having the same experiences. So the more that I can hook up and forgive and own, in a sense, own my own behavior and go, okay, I've done this to myself. This is my projection. This is my projection out here that the world, and when I say that, it's like if I'm looking at the world and I'm angry and I'm a victim and I'm pissed off because somebody hurt my feelings or they didn't perceive me rightly, I'm hooking up with the ego mind, with the wrong mind. But if I can change my position, choose once again to go, okay, Holy Spirit, let me see this through the eyes of truth. Let me see this with you. Look on it differently. Then the forgiveness does come. Then it's like, they were just being a mirror to me for something that I need to look at and heal within myself. And pain is a great motivator. I think we talked about that a little bit at lunch. I want to come to the day where I don't have to be so motivated by discomfort or unhappiness. But I've experienced some pain. I want to be free from that. And so I have really consciously been trying to practice these past weeks or so that my point of reference is, how can I be helpful to you? How can I show up for you today? And when I have that as my perception or as my, point of reference, then what you do to me I don't take it personal. My ego's not invested. Is he going to lie to me? Is he going to be honest with me? Is he going to give me the money I want? Or whatever is going on, I'm coming from a place of, how can I show up in love for you today? So it's like the content changes, the cause changes, and then the effects out here kind of take care of themselves.
Well, that almost sounds like karma.
It's instant karma.
Yes.
Because, the Bible says it's in giving that we receive, right? So it's in this moment that I receive whatever I'm giving. So if I'm angry at you or I'm judging you, that's what I'm receiving in that moment. So that's one of those lessons that really woke me up when I went, oh my God, I get it. This isn't about that long-term karma that comes later. It's instant
right here
karma.
now.
So how do I want to show up today? What do I want to feel today? Well, I much rather feel love and peace. And so I have to choose that 100,000 times a day sometimes. And I'm not always good at it. I'm into it. Somebody pulls out in front of me and I'm driving. I'm going, God darn it. So I have to go back and choose.
So it's about altering our perception.
Yes.
And it's not being done to me, it's being done for me.
What works for me is to know that I'm doing it to myself. And I have to take full responsibility for it. So I don't think, it's not my belief that God's going, that I'm like a pawn on the table and he's arranging everything for me. It's that this is my dream, I'm dreaming it, If I want to change the effects of my dream, I have to change my point of reference.
I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Probably just saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
which is really basic perception.
Right.
You know, is this person doing what they're doing because of me, or are they doing it because of themselves?
Right.
Yeah.
And are they a mirror for me? Because,
Yes.
if I don't have any heat about something or any unforgiveness from my past about something, and you do something, it's not going to affect me. I will be able to respond with you for love. But if, I have issues with 6'6" tall men who, raged over me when I was 5 years old and I haven't healed that, and you come
Yes.
along, oh, hello, am I going to have some issues
And that's
with
always
you?
that's the mirror.
That's the mirror.
So
But the only thing I can change is going back and
How do I deal
forgiving
with the reflection?
whoever, whatever, forgiving it and letting it go.
Yeah.
Because then you have a whole role assigned to you that you didn't even know about. It's like, and I can use my dear husband as an example. I think in relationships, we come in with scripts we've written, This, my husband's name is Tim. And so it's like Tim already had it stacked against him because he needed to undo all those things that had been done to me. So I already had a list, because if he really loved me, he'd take out the trash without me asking. And if he really loved me, he'd do this. And that's not love. That's not coming up clean. So once I kind of started realizing, oh, this isn't about Tim. I don't know who, I'm wanting Tim to save me from my past instead of just forgiving my past. Then I can kind of, there's too many people in that room. It's not just me and Tim in that marriage. It's Tim, myself, and everyone who ever did me wrong that I hadn't forgiven.
And anyone who did him wrong who he hasn't forgiven.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Gets pretty crowded.
It does.
I know. Been there with I work with couples, and that's one of the things we work on is that what's going on here has nothing to do with really here.
Exactly.
And breaking that whole perception that what you just talked about.
Right.
Yeah. Course in Miracles. Anything in there that tells why it was presented, when it was presented, was there time significance to it, or was it just responding to Helen's problem?
For me, this is just my own. I haven't ever read anything that says it came about in 1963, because my opinion about that, which makes perfect sense to me, is when Bill said there's got to be another way, and she agreed. In that moment, it took two people. It took those two going, let's find another way for it to come through. And the Bible talks about where two or more are gathered in my name. And so for me, it took them finally getting to that crossroads and making that decision for it to come through.
But then as it comes through in the divine infinite wisdom, it's like, this is not just for the two of you. Go out and spread
Absolutely.
the message.
Yeah.
And give it to them in a way that they can follow it.
Right.
Beautiful. Let's talk about some of the, might be what I perceive as the basics. How does the Course in Miracle define God?
I don't think it defines God.
Okay.
Not like you and I would, I haven't read anything or experienced anything, just that God is love and is the creator. But again, the Course is using words and symbols that we use, that we understand, to help wake us up. I know as a young girl going to Maple Lawn Baptist Church in Dallas, getting the hell scared into me, I had a big picture of what God was, the old stereotypical long-bearded white dude, slamming people, sending them to hell. And so there's nothing that really, they don't address that as that God is not a tall, bearded dude doing that. It's just that God is your Father and God is love. And again, I think it's really much more than that in experience, but those are the words that we have to use. So I haven't ever, and I've read it pretty clearly, that defines that.
So let's define love then. How does it define love?
I should have brought my computer so we could have not Google it, but I have the program so we could look it up. Love is, in the world of the dream, love is still just a symbol of what waits for us when we wake up, which is the awareness of who we are with God. It's just that, it's that peace, again, that passes all understanding.
So
it's not the love. You know, we have a definition of love, and I'm sure in your work with couples, you understand my definition of love is going to be different than Tim's, right? Because I have all the, like I just talked about. And so, you know, I think we as people in this dream want to be able to fix and put everything in that same kind of order. Well, the Course says this is love. It talks about that there are only true two emotions in the world, love and fear is not real because God didn't make it.
Does love have gradations? I mean, don't we become more loving as we integrate more of the Course into our daily life?
Sure. You know, I would say that we become more aware of the presence of love within us. So it's really more still about that awareness and how much love we're letting in and having that extend out into the world. That's what I'm trying to make my point of reference. But because I still have this personality of Peg who still has agendas, I really have to kind of work through that and make it really, again, a conscious decision to do that.
So like the Beatles once said, at the end, the love we take is equal to the love we make.
I know. That is such a, you know, and do you know what Dean Martin, I think, would have been a Course in Miracles student. Because that song, when you walk, let's see, how's it go? When you walk through the dream, but you know you're not dreaming, Signora, excuse me, but you see, back in old Italy, that's amore. So that's love, to be able to walk through the dream and know you're not dreaming. Because when I do that, then I'm really able to show up for you in a way that wakes us both up, you know? When I just can put all that stuff aside and come from that place, then that's when I think the healing takes place.
So it's like an ebb and flow, and depending on how it's ebbing and flowing, we learn more about the illusions we've bought into, or delusions we've bought into.
Right.
Divine order then is redundant. It becomes the love.
Yeah, I think that things like divine order and, you know, the world, the Course says that every thought creates at all levels, at every level. And so the ego's thought system created tons and tons and lots of stuff. And love creates lots and lots of stuff. But here I am walking through the world, and it's a dream. So things like the divine order and prayer and all this positive stuff, they're still just a reflection of the truth. They're not the truth because, again, we're in the dream. Just like as a mirror, it's still a reflection. And so, you know, the things that we use in this world to wake us up, you know, the Course says that this isn't the only way. You know, that there are plenty of other ways in the world to wake up. This is just this way. It doesn't say that it's the only way. And so how I interpret divine order and say go into unity and prayer and all these other things is those are a reflection of truth. Because to me, divine order, it means something different to me now than even, you know, and I found unity really at the same time I found all this other stuff. I feel so fortunate that I found unity, a guru, the Course in Miracles. It was just an amazing time in my life. And so divine order to me really did. I believe that God was up there making sure everything happened just the way it was supposed to be. Today, because I think that that thought creates at all levels, I'm not so sure if it's divine order or if I'm creating it.
Well, that was the question I was just
as a
going to ask.
lucid dreamer, kind of, yeah. Am I now creating that? Is it synchronicity or is it me creating what's going on in the world? So I'm in a really big learning stage, again, another level of learning in my own experience of the Course, which is a little scary. It can be a little frightening because I know too much to be asleep. But I don't really know enough to be really awake. So now how do I walk through the dream? You know, and so I'm just trying to show up and see how my thought creates and show up in love to people.
So how does the literature deal with that? I mean, God a interactive, random happening? Is this karmic?
Well, the literature, what the literature says is that the Holy Spirit is going to use whatever it is you have in your life to help wake you up. So the literature pretty much points you back into the direction of the Holy Spirit within you. Some people call it Jesus, to your right mind, to God, Buddha. Those are all still, again, just symbols of that right-mindedness, of that awareness of love within us. So it doesn't say, go here, do this, take a ride. It says go within.
So you're going within, created whatever it was that drew all these things to you.
You can say it that way, yeah. That's a good way to say it.
You created a need in some form or fashion to be spiritually taught. And all these things.
And again, I'm not an expert. I'm not one of those people who can, but here's what my thought about that is that maybe in the last dream, or my last form or reincarnation, I woke up just a little bit more. So I'm still having the dream, and maybe this time I'm going to wake up just a little bit more. And so I don't know if I created the path of the spirituality or if that I just got a little bit more awake. And it's kind of like, and I think we talked about it, when my son has a dream and he's having a nightmare, all I can do, so I don't frighten him to death and go, wake up, I just go, honey, you're dreaming. Wake up. You're safe. It's okay. So I try to get that, and because you can hear the phone ringing in your dreams, and you incorporate that. So I have it that Jesus or God or Holy Spirit, this is how my picture of it looks, is that he's just sitting there going, it's just a dream. Wake up. You're safe. And so that in my dreaming state, I'm kind of getting that message a little bit more so that I can bring myself up. Have you ever had one of those dreams where you knew you were dreaming, but you couldn't quite wake yourself up and you were kind of groggy and trying to get yourself awake? I feel like I'm kind of in the groggy, or I hear the alarm and I start to wake up, but then I hit snooze and I go back to sleep, for a little while longer.
So let me ask another question then. Is there a distinction between spirit and soul in the Course in Miracles? Because, you're talking about oneness and you're talking about individuality again, so to me those are the two terms.
Right.
And
okay.
I'm just putting them in a reference point that I'm familiar with.
Good, yeah, I get that, and that's all that's all I really know how to talk into at some, in myself. The Course in Miracles, it took me a while to really get it, because I really kept thinking the Course in Miracles was really talking to this personality of Peg. But again, but it talks about that there's really only one son. And that one son asked the question, what would the world be like over there? And that one son is having the dream of billions and billions of separated selves. And so I was reading the other day, and it's like, who is the you? Who is the you that's having... So it stands to reason, if the world is a dream, who's dreaming it? It's not just my one little self. It's one dreamer. That's how I believe, that there's one dreamer. So I'm kind of responsible in this moment for the personality of Peg and waking up this part of the mind. But there's still only one dreamer.
So getting into a little bit of biblical stuff then, what you're talking about could translate into a misunderstanding that comes out as to 144,000 will be saved. In the Bible it says Adam fell asleep. It's in Genesis. Uh-huh. Adam fell asleep. It never says he woke up. It doesn't. Interesting.
And that's what was so fun about the first part of the Course, is that, Jesus goes back and kind of reinterprets some of that stuff. And when I read that, I went, oh my God, that sent kind of a shiver. It sent a knowing. It's like when I was a little girl and I heard about Judas. This is, of course, way before the Course. I was little. And I heard about Judas, and everybody always seemed to hate Judas. I went, well, he was just doing his job. That was just my little innocent mind knowing that if Judas hadn't done what he did, Jesus couldn't be where he was. We couldn't have this whole Presbyterian church, because I went to Presbyterian, then I went to Baptist. And so I even knew then, it's like, well, he was just doing his job. And in the course, Jesus talks about, when they talk about Judas, how could I even say the word betrayal when I was about to demonstrate that I believed in only love? So it kind of goes back every here and there and reinterprets some of what the Bible says, which I loved, because during that time in my life I had read the Old Testament and I was really doing a lot of exploring, so I really liked hearing that. So it might just be fun for you, being who you are, to go back and read the first couple chapters.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you just mentioned, because that ties into, it's maybe 2 years now, the Gospel of Judas has been around. And
right, yeah.
Gospel of Judas affirms exactly what you're saying, which is, which makes a whole lot of sense, because, how does all this happen and come about if it's not pre-planned?
Right. Because, in the Course, Jesus talks about that he had to have an extreme demonstrate an extreme as a teaching device, the crucifixion. Him being, okay, I am not a body. And nailing me to the cross here is not going to stop who I am. It's not my reality. My reality is, I think Jesus was the big lucid dreamer. And that doesn't diminish anything that he did. It just means that he was kind of came back in as a reflection of truth for us.
So then the quotation that, God, why have you forsaken me, when he was on the cross, is either a hiccup or a misunderstanding by somebody who was...
Sure. I mean, and I know that how many times the Bible was rewritten and edited, and, Judas didn't get in, and Mary Magdalene's book didn't get in, and it was, I think that the Bible, possibly could have been inspired by God, but it was certainly interpreted and messed with by men. And even though I don't know, I know that why have you forsaken me is the beginning of a passage somewhere else in the Bible that doesn't end unhappily. So it's like they don't, but I can't recall.
Well, I mean, at the end it's, forgive them, they know not that which they do, or something to that effect.
Right.
I mean, but it was just that one moment of actually believing the dream was real.
Could be.
And
I love the Last Temptation of Christ. That was all those layers in the movie.
I never saw the movie.
Never saw the movie.
Okay.
You should see that movie.
Next time it's on Netflix, I will.
Yeah. Well, it's always on Netflix.
Is it?
Well, you just got to order it.
I don't get the DVDs. I just do the downloads.
Oh.
And not everything's available on download.
Yeah. In that book, I mean, there were some things I didn't like about it, but it does have Judas and Jesus. That's why I loved it. I didn't know what to expect when I saw it, making the agreement in some ways, so.
Way cool. I want to take a little break for a few minutes. I got to make a couple of announcements. I don't know if there's any announcements you want to make, if like there's a study group or something, which I want to get into, afterwards, but let's make some of these announcements. So I say this every week, and I'm going to continue to say this. This is public access television. You are part of the public. Love to hear from you. Shows you'd like to have me do. Maybe you want to do a show with me. Comments, criticisms, and shows that have been done. Questions about something that's been said. This is public access. This is public service. I do this because I believe this is what Spirit wants me to do, which is get a spiritual message out there. And kind of what Peg had said, as the Course says, which is there's more than one path. There's infinite paths, I believe. God is infinite, and I don't, just promote one path. So let's hear from you. Also, I talk about it every week. I put it out there. I am, besides a minister, I'm a state licensed counselor, and I do spiritual counseling. I do couples, I do families, I do individuals. I firmly believe if we don't have a spiritual component to our healing, we're really not healing. That traditional therapy asks us to fix the problem with the same instrument that's creating the problem, which in the context of the Course in Miracles is going to our ego and saying, you created this problem, now fix it. It's not going to happen, I don't believe. So I'm available. My information for contact is flashing. I do not charge for my services. I work on a donation basis. I'm here to be accessible to whoever wants it. Next week, we have Reverend Gail Dillon, who is a religious science minister and has her own congregation, and we're going to talk about them. And she integrates a lot of 12-step into her congregation and her, what she teaches. So we're going to have an interesting conversation there. Now I've got a couple of announcements to make for our good friends at Unity, up at Unity Santa Fe, which is 1212 Unity Way. Sunday, March 27th, Dr. Garland Landreth will be the guest speaker at the 10:30 a.m. service, the topic being, We Can Create Miracles with Our Minds. And then from 1:30 to 5 o'clock, Dr. Landreth will facilitate a workshop titled Manifest the Life of Your Dreams using quantum field technology combined with tapping on acupuncture points. And that workshop will continue into Monday from 6:30 to 9:30 in the evening. There is a fee, which we don't mention on the air. There's a separate fee if you want one or both. Also on Monday, April 4th from 7 to 9 p.m., an Edwin Gaines workshop titled Prosperity Plus, and it covers the 4 spiritual principles of prosperity, which are defined as finding your divine purpose, forgiveness and worthiness, tithing, and giving and setting clear-cut goals. And there's a love offering for that. So if you want more information, call Nancy Holtzman. Her number is 989-4433. You want to find out about the fees or any other questions you may have. That's the end of the announcement. Is there any announcement you want to make?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Let's, in the last few minutes we have, and there's just so many more things I want to ask about, but is it advantageous to do this on your own, or do you do this in a group, or do you do this both?
I for many years just did it on my own because there really weren't groups for some, that I was aware of. And then I did start going to some groups, probably about 5 years, I guess, into my study. And I found that very helpful. I know that Unity has a Monday morning group, and they have a Monday night group. And I think the Church of Religious Science has a lunchtime group on Wednesday.
I think it's Wednesday, yeah.
So it is helpful because you learn, you hear other people's experiences. Again, where 2 or more, it just kind of gets the awareness flowing, I guess. And so so they're both helpful. And there have been times when it's like I just want to take it in and I just want to be introspective with it, and I don't go to groups. And then sometimes I feel like, man, I need a group. It's almost like I need to get to a group. I need to get to a meeting. So it's really up that individual's preference.
If the workbook has a sequence to it, and the group, just studies the text, and you do your own work, which is separate from the text?
Each group is really different, we started a group where we started with the lesson on January 1st, about 3 or 4 years ago. And each week we would meet and we'd talk about the previous 7 lessons. And so we discussed what that came up for us. I know that the group on Monday night has done all kinds of things. They'll start at the beginning of the course and read it all the way through the end. Sometimes there's a leader. They'll pick a leader for the next week, and then they'll set the tone for the meeting. So each group is really individualized by the members that come and what they decide to do, usually as a group. There are some groups where there's a set leader, and they come in and they run the group and they give their opinion. And then there are other groups where it's just like you know, who wants to keep us on track tonight? And we'll just open and read, and there's no one set person who's leading the group.
When you work the 365 lessons in the workbook, you can spread them out as long as you want. I mean, you don't have to do one a day for 365 days. You could.
You know, sometimes it's taken me 2 years to get through all lessons. You know, sometimes because I get up and I'm resistant and I don't want to wake up. I just want to go drink some coffee and watch the news, and I don't feel like being spiritual, you know. And then there are some times when the lesson is so lovely and so sweet and so moving that I want to stay with it for a couple of days. And then there are those lessons that I go, oh, heck no, I don't like this at all, but I'm going to stay with it so I can figure it out. So it's really, again, it's up to you. It's up to you and your inner voice.
It's almost like a self-guided tour.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, well, that's a great way to put it.
One last question. When the book talks about there are many paths, does it explain why?
It doesn't explain why, but I can give you just my
your
opinion.
take on it.
Because I think that, again, it's all about form and content. And I think you'll be able to agree with this on some level, probably this level, which is that, you know, you find being somebody who is aware of all the different religions, and what Unity does is it picks the best out of all those religions, because the content is the content that matters. It's not the form. It's not how it shows up in the world. It's the content. So if the content is about love and forgiveness, it really doesn't matter if you call the Holy Spirit Buddha or Allah, because it's the content of what that is.
Last question before we run out. You got about 30 seconds to answer. How's that? Ooh.
Pressure's on.
In your experience, hasn't all religions taught the same thing? Love is the answer.
Yes.
I mean, love is the bottom line. Love is the vibration, or whatever they want to call it.
Yes.
So everything we're talking about is just reaching out to maybe people who haven't resonated with this message. Maybe it'll resonate with this message.
Right. And if the message is always love, then we're getting the same message, you know.
Beautiful way to end this. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It was great. And again, so next week we'll have Reverend Gail Dillon on. Another way of talking about love, because like the Beatles said, I love that line. In the end, the love we take is always equal to the love we make. So until next week, walk in love and light. Demonstrate it, like the saying says, I am one self, united with my Creator, at one with all aspects of creation, and limitless in power and peace. Don't put limits on it. Until then, blessings to you all. Bye. I'm Rev Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.